accepting my connection now. How odd. Well, that was weird. It's like I couldn't. I had to look at some other streams as well to try and figure out what was going on, and they weren't loading for me. But they are now. Don't know. No idea. New stream. 2 streams in one day. So the engine's booting back up. How much did I tell you about fire ant bridges yesterday? Oh, I told you quite a lot. Yeah, there's no particularly new developments. As far as I'm aware, Liam's trying to cobble bits together. I really want to do the AI for it. It's what I most want to work on at the minute, because it's the progress towards the fire ant update coming out, which is the most important bit of content coming up. Much more important than these extra levels I'm working on. Yeah, maybe the provider had a hiccup. It was weird because I like Twitch chat was still working, and I could go to other websites. So I tried a couple of other websites. They were loading fast and fine. Don't know. Really don't know. Not going to worry about it unless it becomes a common thing. Let's have a look at the source control whilst we wait. It's not particularly exciting though, I'm afraid. Pretty much all the commits to it are either me working on these extra levels, or Matt or Liam working on the bridges and water walking. But we'll take a look nonetheless. Ah, so you're a robot, Huff. That explains your incredible ability to find problems. Okay, so having a quick look at the source control whilst the engine's booting. I'll go back a week. So this week started on the 13th. So Monday the 13th. So from Monday, there hasn't been a huge amount of commits. There was me saying lots of work on the adventure level, including the full colony buff system and the basic map layout. That was my first commit on Monday. Liam said water movement changes dump. Preparation for bridge specific paths. And then Matt says checkpoint, including code fixes for cart bug plants, and then he says checkpoint changes again. So it's just checkpoints on his bridge system. Then I said adventure, trapjaws, leaf cutter base, and various other stuff on this adventure level. Matt said bridge checkpoint. And finally, yesterday, Matt committed some specific cart reservation functions. Oh, right. You have a class that builds robot brains. You don't. You are not a robot brain yourself. I am not a robot. I am alive. You have to look at my face for a couple more minutes. Anyone got any amazing plans for the weekend? Another weekend in lockdown. Well, it's very eased lockdown now here in the UK. That's what a robot would say. We can visit other households now, as long as it's only one other household at a time. Restaurants and bars are open. The local pub near me is open. I've not been. I won't be going. For a start, I have a 1-month-old baby, so it's not pub's not really on the cards anyway for me. This weekend, what are my plans? I'm going to see if I can get some game dev in. See if I can slip some extra time in. Haven't got any major plans this weekend really. Maybe I'll go for a walk. Take the kids out to the park. Pick of Death's a robot. We're all robots really. We're all just a pre-programmed sequence of events. Neurons firing and being reinforced. We're all ants. Alright, we're nearly there. 73%. Always get stuck at 73%. Okay, so the next thing to do is, so I've got it coming up with the positions. We need to filter through them. I need to decide whether I'm going to get the pawn based on the colony ID or get the colony ID based on the pawn. Either one works. You're going to rebuild your robot brain builder and a robot brain class and robot brain classes this weekend. Many things I can now achieve that I had no idea how to do before. Oh. Wrapped as a detective. Gosh, we've had some strange turns in chat over the past few minutes. Like Pactane. Yes, I am back here. I'm a talking head at the minute, waiting for the engine to boot. I've run out of stuff to talk about. Problem is, at the moment, what is going on here with us, I'm making these extra levels, which is more visual than a lot of the other tasks, but the other tasks are just the fire ant bridges. Both the others are working on it now, and they are so complicated. Like, compared to like making new creatures or anything like that, it takes ages. We need to stop adding new mechanics to the game. Stop adding new mechanics and just use the ones we've got. And again, I suppose it's the new mechanics that keeps things interesting. Okay. Back in the engine now. Fire ant bridges also contain a lot of triangles. Well, Yes and no, because they're made up of the ants themselves, so they only use the triangles that the ants use. So there's no bridge model. It's just the ants themselves. But I'm sure there's plenty of triangles involved in those models. It uses a spline that checks which tiles it passes through. I missed the stream, but Twitch just opened it up and where the talking was coming from. Talking is coming from my face, I think. My face seems to do the talking. Reference to any bridge building. Ah. Suspension bridges. I remember bridges. I covered it in structures in year 1. You go over all that 2D bridge stuff that you do in A level. Hated structures. Was no good at it at all. But I was better at structures 1 than I was at aerostructures. Now, aerostructures is really confusing. Right. Okay, so this thing. Basic marker placement AI. Data supplement. But there, I've made a decision. I'm working off the pawn. We're no longer going to be setting the colony ID. No, actually, it does need to still exist. Just it doesn't need to be public anymore. Part of the setup, I'm going to store a reference to the data supplement. Okay, get rid of this stuff. Right, so now we have the data supplement. Now what do we do with it? Right, we need to make a decision. Right, how frequently should it relocate the food harvest marker? Let's initially make it do it every 10 seconds. We'll see how it plays out. Okay, so right, this is where we're going to go through all the for each point of interest. Maybe I should store the tile grid as well. Yeah, let's store the tile grid. That's not what I want. Okay, so get the surface tunnel. Get the actor location. So the location of the service tunnel to the first point. You know what? I think this needs to be in a function rather than a then I can have local variables. Okay, so the locations are going to be given a score, and the highest score wins. Make sure it's empty to start with. I think it is anyway, because I think each time the function runs, the local variables are remade. But I'm just going to do that anyway. We're coming back to chat for 1 minute. Is fog of war planned for any future missions? I don't think so. It's possibly something I'll make use of in some of these extra missions. I was thinking about it for this mission, but I've decided against it in the end. Because fog of war blocks view to everywhere but where your ants currently are. So you kind of want to keep... It forces you to kind of keep an eye on things. Maybe I'll make a specific mission with fog of war in mind. But I think generally, for the campaign certainly, it's not going to be in. I think people have come to expect the current way the campaign works. We never had Shroud either in our game. Some games have Shroud and Fog of War, so there's the fog which blocks anywhere that you're not currently looking at, and then the Shroud which means you don't know what's there until you've explored it. We never included Shroud. Okay, so to get the distance from one location to another, we minus we should just be able to do this. Yeah. So one vector minus the other, that gives a vector that takes us from a vector that will take us from it just gives us a vector from one to the other, and then if you get the length squared, the reason I get the length squared rather than the length is, in order to get the length of a vector, you have to find the square root, and square root is a complex operation for a computer. I think it has to deal with it iteratively. So basically, if you all you care about is comparing lengths, you can leave them squared. You don't have to get the square root of it. So all I'm doing here is comparing lengths to find out which one's the best point. Okay, so we've got the distance now. Well, distance squared. Although we have to take that into account when we're doing the calculation, because a squared function will the greater the distance, that value will go up massively, and I mean massively. A square is an exponential, so 10 squared, 10 times 10 is 100. You increase that value to 20. 20 squared, 20 times 20 is... Oh, my brain's not working. It's 2,000 or something. No, it's been more than that. Oh no, it's 400. 20 times 20 is 400. Okay, so you've jumped there by doubling the value. You've increased the output by 4. So you've got to be careful with that. But what we can actually do is we can use that to our advantage. So basically, the further away it is, the harsher impact that has on our initial value, on the food value. So what we need is a float, which the output of this needs to be a float, which the further away it gets, the further away the location is from your nest, the smaller the value becomes. So essentially we need to multiply the food value point of interest food value. Multiplied by, now we're not just going to times it by that. That'd be the wrong way round. So let's use our. Oh, where's my piece of paper? I had a piece of paper earlier today. What time is it? I've got 10 minutes left. There's an envelope here, that'll do. Back of an envelope, maths. Everyone loves it when I try and do some maths. It goes horribly wrong. Okay, so my wife's taken my children out the front and they're both screaming now. 1 second, I'm going to close the window. Probably can't hear that because this microphone won't pick it up. Does anyone know if non-leaf cutter ants can collect leaves if they're owned by a leaf cutter colony? Oh dear. My son is making a lot of noise. Yeah, my son's the newborn. You can't reason with a newborn. Okay, so 200. So let's say 1 pack of food. Let's use realistic numbers. So 1 pack of food is 400 away and has 200 food, and the other pack of food is 800 away and has 1,200 food. That's realistic in this case. Okay, so if we do, so the distance squared is going to be, what's 400 squared is 160,000, and 800 squared is 640,000. If you do 1 over 160,000, we get some stupidly low number. Alright, I see what's going on. My wife's taken them out in the pram, but they've basically gone because they need to sleep, and they sleep well in the pram. Anyway, 1 over 6.25 times 10 to the minus 6. So the bigger the bottom number, the smaller this value is going to get. So, I mean, as a very basic rule, what you could do is get the length squared, do 1 over it. So 1 over a number makes the number get smaller the higher the number gets. Now, you can multiply that by something now to get it into a more sensible range if we wanted, especially considering that number's going to be huge sometimes. But for now, we're just going to multiply it by the food value. So the greater the distance, the smaller this gets, thus making the food value smaller. And that is going to be its score to start with. Sorry to mean that. But this would not take into account the gather rate sum of the ants of the pawn. The ants are very few, they're not going to get the nearest food. You're right, there is that could be taken into account. Like I say, I'm making very basic moves at the minute. If you have a look briefly at the function that gets updated, it actually comes back with it doesn't there. No, sorry, it was the group information. That's it. I'm just going to reply to a message. I'm going to have to go in a minute. But yeah, the group information could be taken into account. Liam's actually got that information in his stuff. I'm just not going to touch that at the minute. I'm building a very basic system, and then we'll layer complexity onto it as and when we need, if we need. You might find that in this situation you don't need, because it's not meant to be a very clever AI. It's not meant to be a very obviously a clever AI would be great, but it doesn't need to be a very clever AI, because it'll have an advantage over you anyway. As in, it has some of its base built by at the start of the game. More so than. But yes, you could add that sort of thing into the scoring system. At the minute, I haven't even taken into account which group is going for the food, because there's going to be 2 harvesting groups. But yes, there is a lot more you could add into this score system. Okay, so there's the location scores being added. What we're going to do next is that will allow us to pick a location there, and then I believe It was available in the other thing. Anyway, I'm going to have to call it there. But you can see the basics of how that would work. Or probably wouldn't work very well in this case. But right, I'm going to have to stop there. Sorry about the blip in the middle of the stream. I should be back streaming next week. I'll also ask Mike if he wants to do some streaming, because it seems like his just gameplay of the game streams were quite popular. So I'll definitely invite Mike to do more streaming if he wants. So yeah, thanks very much for joining me, and I will catch you all next week. Hopefully I'll be significantly further along with this level by then. Also, hopefully we'll have got somewhere else with the amp bridges. Maybe next week I can actually get some footage of me working on the amp bridge AI. You prefer dev streams? I thought you would, Huff. Yeah, see you next week. All you guys as well. Have a great weekend, and I will see you next time. Ta-ra!